Chapter 37. I slipped out of bed silently, pulling on the baggy jogging outfit Alan had lent me, in lieu of absent clothing of my own. Even though the accountant was the smallest of the werewolves living in this mansion, I could barely draw the string tight enough to keep the pants up around my waist. But at least I'd stay warm this time around, and could carry my starball in the far more useful form of a sword. I didn't leave immediately, though. Instead, I hovered over Kira, loath to be away from her for even an hour. Not that I thought someone would sneak into the mansion and snatch the child while she was sleeping. Our enemy didn't seem idiotic enough to break into an alpha werewolf's lair while Gunnar was in residence. Still, if my sister woke and guessed where I'd gone off to, well, experience proved she'd dive into the fray without bothering to look before she leapt. It was the cold of the floorboards chilling my bare feet that suggested the solution to that particular conundrum. Sneakers. I needed shoes anyway if I was going to walk through the city two-legged, and surely even Kira would turn back to the warmth of the mansion the moment her toes froze into blocks of ice. My feet were half an inch longer than Kira's, but I managed to stuff them into my sister's shoes anyway. Then I was gone, out the door, through the hallway, sliding down the banister in a burst of joy at the unfettered freedom I'd wrapped around myself. Because Kira was safe, and I was finally going on the offensive, rather than acting like a night-blind chicken fleeing a fox in the henhouse. I was the fox this time, and I was ready to hunt. But my mother's ghost wasn't so sure. Stepping into a melon field, standing under a plum tree, she warned me, her words so adamant that I turned in a circle to make sure she wasn't actually present. But no, I was alone in the entranceway of the mansion, only 5 feet distant from the freedom represented by the gargantuan front door. Unfortunately, I remembered this particular proverb from my childhood. Remembered how I'd argued that I wasn't stealing sweets when Mama came in and found me with my hand literally stuck in the cookie jar at 5 years old. Gunnar would judge my actions similarly if he woke in the night and found my bed empty save for Kira. I wasn't running away this time, but how was he to know that? The resultant twinge of guilt, plus something far less identifiable, sent me creeping back up the same stairs I'd recently slid down, continuing to backtrack until I hovered indecisively outside the Alpha's bedroom door. Something about this moment felt like a turning point, like an admission that I no longer hunted solo, that I needed someone to watch my back. That thought nearly sent me scurrying back in the opposite direction as fast as my legs would carry me. But I needed to be rational here, needed to remember that there was more at stake than my fox-sensitive pride. Ensuring I captured our opponent, rather than being captured by him, was more important than asserting prickly independence when Kira was the one who'd suffer if I failed. So I didn't flee. Still, I turned the doorknob thief in the dark slowly, not quite willing to commit to this path by waking Gunnar up. And he heard me anyway. Heard and was across the room before I'd caught more than the barest hint of movement out of the dark. "I was wondering if you'd leave without me," the Alpha rumbled. And when he smiled, I caught a glimpse of wickedly pointed, wolf-sharp teeth. I must have squeaked, because Gunnar stepped backwards, cold air rushing in to cool my suddenly heated cheeks. And as he moved, the moonlight played across his bare chest, sliding over muscles that my fingers suddenly itched to stroke. So that's why my subconscious had been strangely willing for me to accept a hunting partner. Apparently my instinctive side wanted to do more than hunt with this wolf. Dropping my eyes, I clenched my hand over the hilt of my sword, but found little comfort in the cold weight beneath my fingers. A bladed weapon wasn't going to cut through the confusion and embarrassment that now rioted beneath my skin. As if sensing my discomfort, Gunnar's chuckle rolled over me like a warm-fingered caress. so different from the cold silence with which we'd parted earlier in the evening.
I'll put on clothes if that'll make you feel better,
He offered, his voice receding into the darkness, and my feet followed after him, without consideration for the self-preservation instinct that should have made me wait out in the hall. Gunner's bedroom smelled like a jungle, like mail and power and seduction wrapped up in the crispness of fresh dew on pine needles. I remembered the laptop. I called into the silence, hating the fact that I had to clear my throat halfway through my first sentence to ensure the rest of the words came out clear. It's a long shot, but Kira's kidnapper might still be linked to it. He was talking to Kira through the speakers when I showed up. He? And Gunner's attention was trained once again upon the mystery, the almost tangible sway he'd held over my body receding as quickly as it had begun. I was disappointed in myself for regretting the absence, which might explain why I offered more information than my companion had really asked for. It was a computerized voice, I answered, catching a glimpse of hard muscles rippling across Gunner's abdomen as he pulled the shirt on over his head. Anonymous, but yes, my gut says it was a he. Speaking in real time. Do you really still think the killer is your brother? I countered, attention finally snagged by the puzzling dynamics flowing between the two males. Ransom was fighting by your side against Jackal's wolves yesterday. He let you take charge of me and Kira without batting an eye. For a moment, I thought I'd pushed too hard, because the granite of Gunner's aroma rose up to overtake the fresh, leafy odor, and he sank down onto the bed to lace up his boots without bothering with a reply. But then Gunner laughed out a short, huh, beneath his breath, glancing up at me, with an almost hangdog droop to his features. I'm still figuring out my brother, he answered, the words coming slowly, as if they were just now coalescing for the very first time. For my part, it was dawning upon me that this alpha's earlier silent treatment hadn't been anger at my actions. Gunner's instinct outside the theater had been to protect me, which had likely confused him as much as it did everybody else. So I hummed out a question, gave my companion the space to speak or not as he saw fit. When we were kids, Ransom was the rash one, Gunner continued after a long moment. He made mistakes, and was glad to have me as his compass. But maybe he's grown out of that. Maybe he doesn't need me any longer. The pain in Gunner's voice was palpable, so I did my best to brush his worries aside. Siblings always need one another, I countered, unable to imagine a day when Kira and I would be glad to see the other's taillights receding in our respective rearview mirrors. Well, Gunner answered, neither overtly agreeing nor disagreeing. He was fully dressed now, cloth covering every delectable surface, before I'd had a chance to really see any of it in the light. Are you ready? We're less likely to wake the household if we go out the back.